Want some candy?
Brian! You come here right this minute.
Mommy, I saw a gun! Want some candy? Want some candy?
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Wars. Prepare for Prattle.
It was a defensive exercise.
Yeah, best defense is a good offense. Or is it the other way around?
Welcome to Prattle World. I'm your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan. And in this podcast, I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to another edition of Secret Defenders, where I task my guests to defend their favourite movies that are underrated, infamous, or obscure. And I have the matador of the mandatory Marvel and DC here today to defend one of his favourite films. It is, of course, Max Byrne. Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Dan. I'm absolutely honoured to be on this show. As you know, I'm a huge fan, a Patreon of this wonderful show.
You are a patron, and I just wanted to say again, thank you for donating all the money you can. I really appreciate any. You know, I honestly didn't think anybody would bite. I thought it'd be up there for a year with no biting, but I really do appreciate anybody that can give. And that's one of the reasons as well. Since I was on your show, I thought it would only be fitting that I have you on mine, but because you talk about comics so much, I thought we'd change the pace a little bit and talk about a cult classic of yours, a favourite of yours. And why don't you tell everybody what that is going to be?
It's going to be the much maligned and quite unfairly, in my eyes, 1990 science fiction action horror classic Predator 2.
Predator 2, and good shout. I think again, sequels are often a little underrated or kind of pushed to one side. Being that the originals are usually so strong and so good, and I think this is one of them. Why don't you explain the plot of the film, and then we'll talk about your defense of the film afterwards.
Yeah, sure, why not? Yeah. So like I said, the film came out in 1990, but it's actually set in 1997. So it's kind of a sort of set in like a quasi-futuristic sort of retrograde future setting. So it's not too far in the future, but it is futuristic for its time slot. So it's set in effect 10 years after the events of the original classic Arnie blockbuster. So it's set in, other than the first film, which is set in the jungle, this is set in Los Angeles. And Los Angeles in this film is in sort of the middle of a big sort of drug gang warfare between the Colombians and the Jamaican voodoo posse. And there's also an enormous heat wave hitting the city at the same time, which, you know, predators are drawn to heat and conflict when they're on their sort of game hunts. And a new predator, obviously not the same from the first film, as obviously he meets his sticky end, spoilers, decides to go hunting into the big city. And obviously in the midst of this drug war, the LA cops are struggling to make any impact into it and keep law and order in the city. And one particular cop, Lieutenant Mike Harrigan, played by Danny Glover, is sort of the alpha male cop that the Predator sort of zeroes in on as the sort of the pride possession that for his trophy cabinet. So starts eliminating people sort of in and around him before warming up for this sort of mano-a-mano clash at the end. There's all kinds going on in the background. There's a crack government unit sniffing round, headed by the wonderful Gary Busey, who are trying to sort of capture the Predator and study it. You know, they've got first-hand knowledge of the events of the first film, which we'll get to later. So there's a lot going on. There's a great cast of characters in this, some great actors, some huge performances. It's not a subtle film by any stretch of the imagination.
No, definitely not.
It's not. But then what do you want? It's Predator 2, for God's sake. Any of the Predator franchise, you don't want a subtle, nuanced kind of movie, do you really? You want, explosions galore, gore left, right and centre, and great Predator kills, and you get them in this film. I think it's a great film that merely suffers in comparison to the classic original. in my opinion.
On the last podcast, I was talking about a little bit about Psycho 2, which I actually think is a good, strong sequel. But obviously, in direct comparison with Psycho, obviously it's not going to hold a candle. But as a sequel and kind of on its own strengths, it is still a very good film. And I think there are a lot of sequels like that. I think you're right that this film does suffer from. I think a lot of people are disappointed Arnie couldn't come back or wouldn't come back. I think that's probably the main disappointment people have with this.
Yeah.
I think Danny Glover is a great actor. I think he's good in the role. I think he's good in this role as well. But I think the main hurdle for a lot of people, you know, with sequels as well, you would kind of want some form of continuity. You want some form of things evolving and changing and moving on. And, you know, we see this with, like, you know, Halloween 3 and things like that. People don't like too much change. Like, a little change is fine, or, you know, shake it up. And that's the problem with sequels and reboots, is that you want to change it a little bit, but you don't want to change it too much. And then, you know, if it's too much the same, people are going to complain, and if it's too different, people are going to complain. So that's always the issue you have, I think, with carrying on a potential franchise or a follow-up to a very, you know, popular movie, you know, be it rebooting Ghostbusters or whatever. And I think that's the main hurdle for most people. But I think when you go past that, you know, on its own merits, you know, it's not bad. What are kind of your favorite elements of the movie itself? Like, do you like that it moved from a kind of jungle setting to more of an urban jungle, or a concrete jungle, if you will?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, because if you set it in the jungle again, you're just rehashing the first film, aren't you? Completely. And that you'd probably suffer the lack of Arnie even more if you set it in something that was virtually identical to the first film. So I like that they gave it a fresh setting and set it, you know, in a city as opposed to, you know, in the depths of the jungle in Central America or wherever it is the first film set. That's good. I think it puts a really nice fresh twist on it. And I think, you know, it serves the Predator character a bit more, in my opinion, you know, gives it a bit more versatility, shows it can go on the hunt in any sort of different environment as opposed to just a jungle setting. It can adapt and, you know, camouflage itself anywhere. It doesn't have to be a forest setting. So I'm all for it. Do you like that, or would you have liked to have seen it, you know, back where they came from, kind of thing?
I think when I talked about all the Predator comics, I did a top 5 Predator comics podcast. I remember talking about that. I like a change. I like seeing these different characters, different kind of interactions with the Predator, different hunts, different types of Predator and things like that. So I like the variety. So the fact that they did move it to a city, I think is a great idea. I think it's a brilliant idea. I think it works. It builds the universe as well. Like, there's a lot of kind of, I mean, you could argue this film advances a lot of the kind of, and build is like a good sequel should, you know, expands the universe, adds new elements and new things to the lore and the legend of the Predator species, and things like it is adding and evolving what the Predator franchise would be. So yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I think it's, again, like you said, he's adaptable. He's, you know, this evolved species, you know, probably much older than human beings. You know, they've been, obviously, spoilers for the end, but you kind of know that they've been coming here for a very long time, you know. So it makes sense that they would be much more advanced. But then again, that's the great dichotomy of the Predator, is that they are quite an advanced race, but they're still very kind of, there's these traditions and tribal aspects and, you know, kind of mythology to their world, which I love as well. But no, I think that they made the best decision, moving it to a totally new locale. I think one of the original comics was they end up in like the Siberia or somewhere, don't they? Their spaceship crash lands, right. And that was an interesting one to see them in the cold, because they were struggling a bit more because they're kind of reptilian, you know, cold-blooded sort of thing. So that's interesting. Maybe one of the films in the future, hopefully, you know, maybe does something like that. But no, I absolutely agree. I think it gives, you know, because I mean, this particular version of LA, this not so distant future LA, where it is, you know, very much more kind of racially diverse, got a good kind of racially diverse character set, which would make sense, like going into the future from when they were setting it, and then also that I'll be honest with Predator 2, I think it wears a lot of its influences on its sleeves, like, if you know what I mean. So I think the city and the crime-ridden city and the cops being like underfunded and the higher ups not really giving a shit about the regular John kind of cops it's very RoboCop to me. It's very kind of, it screams RoboCop to me, which is, again, if you're going to steal from the best. I totally agree. And I think that does help it and does add another layer. And there's also that scene in the meat packing plant, or the butcher, whatever they call it, which is very reminiscent of Alien, especially when Danny Glover gets on the headset when the leading general corporal military guy freezes. So I was a bit like, well, that's quite you're stealing quite a bit there. But again, I get that and understand it, and I see why. I mean, Bill Paxton is even in the movie, you know what I mean? So, they're clearly influenced and more. I won't go too much into spoilers just yet, but there's more links to the world of aliens and Alien.
Yes.
But no, I think, on the whole, great idea to move it to the location. Like you were saying, you've got a great cast as well. You've got Ruben Blades, you've got Bill Paxton, you've got Gary Busey, you've got Adam Baldwin. I want to say Adam Baldwin.
Adam Baldwin, is one of Busey's lackeys,
Lackey. Is it what's her name?
Robert Darvey's in it as well.
Oh yeah, Robert Darvey
as the police captain, who's Glover's like ball busting superior. He's only in about 2 or 3 scenes, isn't he? But he makes his presence felt. Yeah. I love a bit of Robert Darvey, as I talked about Maniac Cop over the Christmas holiday. We had a good laugh about Robert Darvey and his performances. And Maria Conchita Alonso. That's who I forgot. She's great in it as well. It was kind of a ball busting. Again, like there was a little bit of Aliens for me as well when Bill Paxton is like, where he's having a dialogue with Maria, and he's like, she goes like, "How are your balls?" And he's going, "Oh well, they're fine. How are yours?" Made me think of like Hudson and Vasquez and that kind of. It is, isn't it? Yeah, very similar relationship there. Yeah, very similar. Like you said, take what you can get. Let's not forget, Aliens was only out 4 years before this film, so still very fresh in the memory, wasn't it? So, why not? And
I think RoboCop 2 came out the same year as this as well. So I think might have been the year of sequels. I think this particular year. But tell us more about the reasons you like the movie and that you think it should be held higher aloft than it already is.
Well, like you said a bit earlier, it massively expands the mythology, doesn't it, of the Predator world? Because if you think back to that first film, you learn very little about what the creature is and what it's doing. It just kind of is there in the jungle, isn't it? And you don't learn what its motivation is or anything about its sort of, the race it comes from. It is just there. It takes out the military unit and then, has the fight to the death with Arnie at the end and comes a cropper. But in this one, you learn so much more. You get to see, it's the first time you ever get to see a Predator ship in all its entirety. Let's not forget, at the end, you see about 8 Predators at the end there when they face down with Danny Glover after the final fight, so you learn these sort of traveling packs. You get this wonderful exposition scene with Gary Busey's G-man, Peter Keyes from the NSA or whatever he's from, who does this whole speech.
Is it otherworldly life forms? I think is the association he's with, OLF or something, OWLF, something like that.
That's it. Yeah. When he's trying to sort of explain it to Glover, otherworldly life forms, and Glover's looking a bit vague. He goes, "It's a fucking alien," or something like that. Just because the penny hadn't quite dropped, I think. Yeah.
Well, I mean, Gary Busey is the master of the understated and the understatement in all of his films. Obviously, he's a mad bastard in and off camera, on and off camera. He's a mad bastard.
He is, he is. But he is great in this film. Let's be fair, he is really good in this film. I did read initially that obviously before they couldn't secure Arnie to come back, Peter Keyes basically was kind of a rewrite substitute for Dutch to come back, and that Dutch would have been kind of, so this anti-hero character that Peter Keyes is sort of less he's not a villain in it, is he? Let's be honest, but he's kind of villainous, isn't he?
Yeah.
If Dutch had been back, it would have been a much more substantial role, and he would have shared top billing with Danny Glover and all the rest of it. And, probably the end would have been very different. So they had to, when it became very apparent Arnold wasn't going to come back, they had to sort of rewrite the script and overcome and adapt that situation as they came up with Keyes. But Keyes is a great creation. I love him as a sort of a government spook, and that, like I said, that exposition scene where he sort of lays on, government have been aware of the Predator coming to Earth all this time. He's got first-hand knowledge of the events of the first film, which I love. I love it when sequels, although this is a standalone adventure and obviously doesn't feature anyone from the first film, or does it? I'll get to that in a minute. But it directly links back, doesn't it? I love it when they reference events of the first film and things like that. It's really quite clever. But yeah, in terms of no one coming back from the first film, they cut it out. But that scene where he's in that sort of trailer truck with Glover and he's telling him what the actual situation is, those video screens in front of him there where he's watching his men sort of spraying down the slaughterhouse and preparing it to spring the trap. And he's talking about, 10 years ago, one of his kind, eliminated a special forces unit in Central America. On that screen there's footage of the girl from the first film, Anna, the lady they capture from the guerrilla camp, but she kind of tags along. And she survives to the end and escapes on the chopper with Arnie. There's footage of her there being interviewed, but they cut it out. But apparently there's one frame where you can actually see her, like a head and shoulders shot, portrait shot of her, like a video, like a sort of like a deposition kind of shot of her giving her evidence as to what was going on. And apparently they even shot footage of her going back to the scene from the first film where the explosion was and showing Busey's unit, where it all happened and things like that. But they cut it all out. But she did film that part apparently. So it's a shame that they couldn't have at least found reason to put that in, and then it would have given that even more that sort of connective tissue between the two films. I would have liked to have seen that.
Yeah, that would have been nice. Sounds like when they cut Michael Biehn from Terminator 2. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
That dream sequence where he's like, "You've got to protect our son, Sarah." So that would have been a nice kind of callback. I read on IMDb that apparently it's kind of subtly kind of hinted that Keyes actually made Arnie's team go in to flush the Predator out.
Right, yeah. So he was the man behind Carl Weathers kind of thing.
Yeah, behind the kind of what he was kind of just he's putting them in there. Knew there was something or something was amiss, and then they kind of, which I think is quite an interesting thing that they actually knew was sending them in for a reason. They knew there was something. So yeah, I quite like that that's hinted that it might be him. I think he, I did say before he's a bit mental, old Gary, but I think this is probably one of his more reserved roles. To be honest. But he's great, and he delivers all those kind of lines and the exposition. It's not like a dump of exposition that's like, oh, here we go. It's kind of like it does link back, and and it ties the kind of this film and that film together, because obviously there's quite a fair bit of time has passed between 10 years has passed between the two. Why were all kind of like these future kind of dystopias all set in like 1997? They all seem to be like wasn't Escape from New York like 97 or
something like that? Yeah. I don't know. They must have thought it would be a bad year. Let's not forget 1997 was supposed to be Judgment Day, Terminator 2.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
there you
that was supposed to be the day the bombs dropped.
I knew there was another one. Well, there we go. Something about 97, guys. Just, I mean, I can't remember what happened in 97. Was there any big horrific events?
No. My 18th birthday was in 97. That might have been horrific. but other than that, no, not that I can remember.
Oh, dear. I love that this film kind of gets straight into the action. Like it doesn't wait around. It's it starts with the kind of even the opening's quite interesting, because you start in the jungle, you hear the jungle drums going, and you hear that, and then all of a sudden you kind of come over the trees, and then you see the city of LA, and then it's just in the middle of this horrific gang war that's just going on. It's like I said, it's like guns going off. It's like RoboCop. It's just everyone's just heavily armed in LA at this time, and I love, you know, Danny Glover's this huge, like, he's a bit like, I'm glad they got somebody who was a big guy. Like he's not Schwarzenegger, but he's like, I still wouldn't want to fight Danny Glover. I still wouldn't want to have a punch up with Danny Glover because he would destroy me. Like for example, if you cast Bill Paxton in Danny Glover's role, it just wouldn't work. Like, there's no way you would think, as much as I love Bill Paxton, there's no way you would think that he's a challenge for the Predator. Like, he could, you know, put up a decent fight, or the Predator would see him as a worthy adversary or worthy game to hunt. You know, it's something wouldn't really track there. So I'm glad they got somebody who, you know, he has the kind of, you know, we've seen him in Lethal Weapon. He has that kind of ability to kind of carry himself. And you know, in this, he's pretty much kind of Dirty Harry meets Demolition Man, isn't he? In this,
Yeah.
He's he doesn't care about the rules. You know, he's constantly like, you know, not listening to his superiors. He literally goes to fight like Robert Darvey after he like tells him off. It's brilliant. I love him, and he just doesn't give a solitary shit.
No.
But he does,
the
you know,
archetypal gets the job done kind of cop, isn't he?
he's a maverick. You don't like mavericks in this police force.
Oh, no. It's great, actually. There's a bit where after that, and his captain is sort of being dressed down by Darvey's higher up, and there's like a profile on the computer screen of like his police record, and it says something like he's 40% more aggressive, shows 40% more aggressive tendencies than a normal cop or something like that. It's like, how would you calculate being 40% more aggressive? It's I know it's in the future, but still, yeah, he is that kind of, like you said, that Dirty Harry. He plays by his own rules, but highly effective at getting the bad guys, isn't he?
Yeah, and he's got like a crack squad, like you know, all of the other actors. Like, I'll be honest, I think Ruben Blades is the best name I've ever heard in my life. I think it's one of the coolest names anybody has ever had. I'd love a name like Ruben Blades. But he's great as well, even though he's, you know, spoilers, he's not in it for very long, but he plays, you know, he plays a substantial part. And I think he's probably the most detective of the detectives in the police force. You know, he's figuring stuff out, he's calculating. Because like during this gang war, well, again, another good thing about Predator 2 is, you know, you have all the setup with the last one in the mystery, and then the reveal of the monster at the end and the alien at the end. But this, you're like, you've seen it, let's just get straight to it. It's just like, you know, and everyone's getting strung up and chopped to bits and, you know, stabbed and what have you. And I love that bit where it's like, you know, it's very much like, how could someone skin somebody and then carry them up and hang them while he skins them alive, sort of thing. I like that kind of explanation, because it kind of, you know, if you hadn't necessarily seen the first film, you know, you still got a little bit of kind of going, okay, there's something not quite right about this, and kind of leads into the other stuff. So I think his character is kind of well needed within this. And definitely. It
gives Harrigan that emotional connection, doesn't it? Because you learn that they're old friends, they came up together on the force and all the rest of it. So his death really hits Glover hard, and that, you know, he takes it personally, and he's almost has this, he obsessively is sort of going, even, you know, before he realizes that, you know, Busey tells him it's a fucking alien. Before you get to that point, you know, he's hell bent on bringing this guy in, isn't he? He doesn't care, because he's made it personal. So it's good that Ruben Blades' character gives it that personal motivation, because otherwise you'd be thinking, well, stay out of it, mate, you know. But the fact that it's his best friend, exactly, he's like,
there's a great bit in there's a couple of really, well, there's quite a few good bits throughout the film, but one of my favorite bits was when he's in the graveyard, and then there's the little kid, and it's like, want some candy? You know, that whole thing. And he's got a plastic Uzi, and he's like, brr, brr. And I was like, I couldn't remember if I was like, does he kill the kid because he thinks he's armed? Like, because that's one of the rules that's up in the first film. You know, it's been quite a long time since I've seen this, so I kind of forgot like a majority of the middle of the film. I remember the end and I remember the beginning, but kind of middle of the film I forgot. So I was like, is he going to kill a kid? And then obviously he recognizes that it's plastic, and then it's like, want some candy? And then he records or imitates the want some candy. which is great. But then he leaves. I think he leaves Ruben Blade. Is it Ruben Blade's necklace?
Yeah, it's his necklace. Yeah, that he was wearing. Yeah,
I like that because it's either like it's either out of respect because obviously he's at the graveyard. He's paying his respects to Ruben Blade's character. So he leaves the necklace either out of respect or kind of like, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough type thing, which I I'm not sure which one it is, but I quite like trying to figure that out and try and get in the head of the Predator and his kind of honor code and things, what they will and will not do. Another great bit is Maria Conchita Alonso, her character, he goes to kill her only to realize she's pregnant.
Yeah.
And then he just leaves her and she goes into like shock throughout the whole thing. So it's nice to have that little bit of kind of, it's not like, you're not going, oh, he's all right. The Predator's okay. But it's interesting that, that these kind of, some of these monsters are not quite that monstrous, if you know what I mean. They won't go that far, like killing children and innocent people and things. So it's nice that there's rules and regulations, even within the Predator world. I know there's very, very, very bad predators that get like hunted down and they police their own kind sort of thing in sort of the comics and stuff. So it's interesting that they keep that and hold on to that. So yeah, I like kind of the hints and trying to figure out its motive and why would it kill that person and why did they think they needed to kill that person or feel like they had to kill that person. But I like that it's almost tightening the noose around Danny Glover's character because he's killing everybody he interacts with slowly but surely until he gets to him eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of the first film where he picks off Dutch's unit one by one until only Dutch is left. Because it's identified Dutch, and in this film obviously identified Danny Glover, Harrigan character, as the alpha male in the situation, the grand prize. Save the best till last kind of thing, isn't it? So
absolutely,
that's why it picks off all his crew and the King Willie, the leader of the Jamaican voodoo.
I love King Willie. I thought he was a great character. I will say that I don't think voodoo, from what I know, voodoo doesn't come from Jamaica. I think it comes from kind of Haiti.
Right.
I think it originates from Haiti. I don't know if maybe it's carried over there, or maybe that's something they just kind of like, yeah, we'll just make them voodoo. But apparently there was some truth in the kind of Jamaican gangs and stuff at the time because they were actually based on like a real activities. I don't know if they're in LA or somewhere else, but there was apparently some real kind of truth to that gang warfare that was going on. So it was quite interesting to see that because often you kind of see like Russian gangs or Italian mobsters or you don't often get to see kind of like yardies and things like that. I think it adds another kind of flavor because obviously most gangs are kind of more kind of they're kind of based on race or international kind of brotherhoods, if you will. So it's nice to see like a different one. But yeah, I like the King Willie aspect. I like that he thinks it's kind of like a devil or a demon that's come to. I mean that happens a lot. The kind of the alien characters are kind of related to those kind of demonic aspects and stuff. And that scene in the alley where the Predator is just walking through the water, I absolutely loved just the sploshing of the water and it's just coming for him. And then you see him scream and then it cuts away and it's just him carrying away the severed head of King Willie.
Yeah, mid-scream.
Yeah. I mean, I can't believe I forgot that scene. Like, I was like, this is quality. This is a quality scene. Like, how could I have forgotten this? There's a really cool bit as well with when Danny Glover first he's chasing the Predator, where he's chasing the other guy, who I think is the same guy that Catwoman attacks in Batman Returns. In the alleyway, who scratches his face. I think it's the same guy.
Yeah, you could be right. Yeah,
I want to say it's the same guy because they look familiar. Anyway, and he sees the Predator. and Danny thinks he's aiming at him. Harrigan thinks he's aiming at him, and he shoots him dead, and he falls off the building. And then Danny Glover senses the predator, turns around, and he's obviously there's a heat wave. So in heat waves, and when it's hot, you can kind of see the shimmer and kind of like these kind of almost like a mirage. You can see the heat waves themselves. I'm not sure what they call that, but you know what I mean, basically.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
That kind of effect. And I think he's kind of like, because he's so exhausted and the heat's getting to him, but also, it's either that because he goes, oh, it can't be anything. It's not real. It's not a thing. Even though I sense it's there, I sense something is there. It's like, oh no, it's a shimmer, or it's a mirage, or it's the heat getting to me. I love that moment of doubt. And he's just like, am I seeing what I think I'm seeing? Is it a trick of the eyes? Some really, really good stuff.
For sure.
But in comparison to kind of other Predator sequels, what is special about this one, would you say, when you look at maybe Predators or The Predator or Alien versus Predator, maybe? Like what is this one? What is this one that you think stands above the rest?
I think this one probably, despite the ridiculous sort of high concept of it being this, invisible killer alien coming from another world to, going on sort of big game hunting, so to speak. Despite that, this to me feels like the most grounded of the films, of the sequels. I mean, Predators is, that's set on an alien planet. Let's not forget. So that. And essentially feels, in a lot of ways, like a very much a rehash of the first one in so many ways. Even stuff, like the end with the lead character covering himself in mud for a jungle standoff with a predator. Well, that's just lifted wholesale from the first film, And then the Predator is, to be honest, I found to be a complete misfire, to be honest with you. I just didn't think
I agree.
Kind of work. It didn't work very well. I didn't think other than the young boy in that, who I thought was superb, the rest of the cast didn't particularly perform very well. And I just didn't, despite the fact that Shane Black was behind it, you can normally rely on for, a better quality. And obviously he's got links to the franchise from actually being in the first one as Hawkins. I had high hopes for that, and it just didn't quite hit. But this one, I just think you can believe it more. You've got a lead character there who's not like a, jacked up muscle man, Arnie figure, indestructibles kind of super soldier. He's, like you said earlier, you wouldn't mess with him. He's built and he's in great shape for this film, but he feels like, he feels like the kind of guy you would find as a sort of tough, street cop kind of, ass kicker. It's not like a massive suspension of disbelief to watch him in the role. And it just feels more well-made, more well-rounded. It just gets to it quicker as well. Like you said, there's no slow build either, like you mentioned earlier. And you're quite right, because what's the point? Because I suppose the appeal of the first film was you don't know what's going on, and, you don't understand what this creature is until it's revealed for the sort of probably the last third of the film. But if you've seen that, you know what it is. So let's just get on with it. Let's get straight to it. And I like that. And the pace never really drops, literally. Like you said, it literally starts with a shootout on the street with cops getting mown down by the Colombian drug crew. And then it doesn't stop till the very end. It's just a hour and a half, however long it is, 1 hour 40, hour 45, something like that, just non-stop. There's no lull in it. You can't get bored watching it. It's the cast are great. I mean, some of the performances we've not even touched on. I mean, Bill Paxton in this, God rest his soul, actually one of my favorite actors, but I don't think Bill Paxton was ever capable of being subtle. Everything he
maybe not.
He's so well, maybe in some stuff here and there, but generally speaking, you could rely on Bill Paxton to just bring the energy in whatever film he was in, and this is no exception. I mean, his character Jerry Lambert, is it, the Lone Ranger they call him?
Yeah, that's right.
He, when you first meet him, he's in the police station telling some ridiculous story about playing golf to some like bored-looking policewoman, and he's trying to hit on every woman he comes across, and comes out with some great one-liners. He's brilliant in it.
I love that. I love that bit in the bar where he goes up. He's like, "I've just got to go do some real police work," and he goes, "Hey, you're dancing with my sister. Can I have a word with my sister?" And he goes, "Oh wait, you're not my sister." He starts,
I know.
Starts groping at her and stuff.
It's cringe, but he can get, only Bill Paxton could get away with stuff like that, I mean, it's a shame he's no longer with us, because he was always great value, and he's great in this as well. And other than sort of the bluster and the stupid stuff his character comes out with, he's actually a really good cop, isn't he? He's the one who's got the surveillance expertise to track keys in his team to try and find out what they're up to, and he displays real courage when his end comes as well, down in the subway, which is another fantastic set.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's what, again with the alley scene, I forgot about the subway scene. I'm like, why would I forget this? This is quality filmmaking. I quite like Bill Paxton's character because he does have kind of an arc, which I don't think a lot of the other ones get. Because obviously he's known as the Lone Ranger because he's got this transfer, and he's known as the Lone Ranger, and they're kind of a bit like, well, we don't really want to trust you, we don't want to get to know you, we don't want to get close to you because all your partners have died, under, and they don't really say like mysterious circumstances or anything, but it's almost like he's bad luck, and these cops are a little like what's the word, superstitious kind of thing. So and he's a bit annoying, and he's a bit of a lech and stuff. So they're kind of like, there's a lot of jokes being played, and there's a lot of banter and stuff. But they're kind of a bit like, we're just going to keep you at arm's length because we're not sure about you just yet. But like as annoying as he is, like he grabs the is it the Tony Pope or something, the hardcore guy, the reporter? Yeah,
the news reporter guy. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of wish we'd had a bit more of him, because I thought his character might have been a bit more interesting to kind of explore, or maybe if he got more directly involved with the investigation, or maybe he had a bit of information that he could give to Harrigan or something. But he kind of comes. I appreciate his appearances and what he's trying to do, but I was kind of like, I just needed a bit more kind of substance from it. I imagine there's a deleted scene of him doing something or becoming more integral to the plot, maybe, but it's basically there just to be an annoying thing for Harrigan to punch and knock around, I think, and be another frustration in his world of frustrations, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I had visions of him sort of getting. I know the Predator wouldn't go after him because he's not a threat, not a prize. But I had visions when I watched it for the first time all those years ago of him getting killed in the crossfire or something like that. Or
I guess like a blade in his neck or something.
Yeah. He just happens to be stood in the wrong place or something and gets his face sliced off or something like that, but it wasn't to be. No. But you do get a great array. One thing I didn't mention as well in this film is you get a great array of the weaponry, the arsenal that you never got to see in the first film. All these new toys that it has. In the first film, he essentially has his shoulder cannon and his sort of Wolverine claw that comes
wrist
out.
Blades,
wrist blade, and that's kind of it really for his weaponry in that first film. But here he has like a net, that sort of razor sharp net, and that spear, of course, and the little hook thing that fires out, which gets stuck in the wall at least.
It's got the disc.
The disc, the disc that is his undoing in the end. I mean, there's all these new stuff, so it's great, isn't it?
I read that. I totally agree with you. I read that Stan Winston was obviously in the last film. He wasn't involved until very much towards the end of the film, because obviously they redesigned the Predator to be less like a lizard and more like a kind of dreadlocked kind of hunter from space type thing with all this technology. But with this film, he was like, well, I'm starting here from the ground up, so I'm going to expand the kind of the mythos and the technology. So I think once they saw this, like the spear and the net gun and the all this other stuff, the blades and everything, and the little prong he shoots out, that little kind of hooked prong thing. I think they were like, right, this is all amazing. Let's show as much of it as possible. Let's get in all these really unique kills, because I think that's what you want when effectively the Predator is a slasher movie, slasher from space, if you will. And I think that's part of the kind of slasher genres. You get that uniqueness of the kills. You kind of want that variety, or you'll be a bit like, oh, it just stabbed everybody in the chest. Oh, it's a bit boring. You want somebody going into a meat grinder or a wood chip or something like that. So you want that diversity there. But I couldn't agree, and it looks brilliant. What did you think of the design of the Predator? Do you think it was better than the original, or did it improve? Was it worse? What do you think?
They didn't drastically reinvent it, did it? I mean, they gave it its own look, but it didn't look a million miles away from the the one in the first film. Just some little flourishes here and there, which I quite like. I mean, you suppose you get to see the difference more at the end when the whole tribe come out of the shadows to sort of pay their respects to Glover's character at the end there, and you can see there they all look very different, don't they? To sort of set them apart, so they don't look like a set of identical twins or whatever. So I like the fact that they just give it, they give them all that uniformity. So essentially, you can tell they're all from the same sort of species, but just little flourishes, little bits of colour here and there, or a slightly different, marking on the uniforms and that. So I think I probably prefer the look of this one to the first film. It just comes across as a bit more, they had more money to spend on it, although it sort of backfired because it made half as much as the first film commercially. Yeah, it did. Yeah, I think I was reading this one made about 57 million at the box office, whereas the first one made 98.
Okay.
But this cost nearly twice as much to make. So it was a bit of a disaster, I suppose. I suppose that's why there was no Predator films after this for about 15 years or something like that, till they did AVP. Probably kind of buried the franchise for a bit. But you can tell, though, that they've got more money to spend in this film. Like we said, all the toys and the effects seem to be a bit more robust than the first film. Although I do think the first film still holds up really well where that's concerned. But yeah, I think the Predator in this film, something about it looks even bigger and more menacing, I think, than the first film.
I think they did make this Predator a bit taller, I believe. I think I read somewhere like a foot taller. However, it was played by the same guy, Kevin Peter Hall, who played the previous Predator. So I think it's really cool that they got him back. He's famous for also playing Harry from Harry and the Hendersons.
Right, okay.
Also played a mutant bear in the film Prophecy. I think that's the 1979 Prophecy film. Sadly, he actually passed away a year after this was released. Unfortunately, but he's a big guy, and he has a cameo in the original film as the helicopter pilot at the end as well.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, right at the end. Yeah.
And I was reading as well that he was studying kind of African tribal dance to kind of give the Predator a kind of fluidity and a kind of, almost like I don't know. There's almost elements of like a hacker in there, when he's like when he spreads the arms out and it's like like come and get me type of thing. So there's I really like those kind of more tribal hunting elements from real life that are kind of injected into this kind of alien species stuff. So it was really good. It was so sad that he went when he did. But he also played an alien, almost an alien hunter as well in another film called Without Warning, which predates Predator. But it's a kind of a very similar concept, but a lot more kind of low budget and stuff. But he played the alien in that film as well. But yeah, absolutely shame he had to go there. But
no, he's very good. I mean, when
good.
you're as tall, he must have been 7 foot tall, for real. And when you're that tall and you've got that kind of, skill with physical movements and everything, I mean, he really does give so much character to the character, doesn't he? He's, when you think I think it was in the first film initially, it was Jean-Claude Van Damme, wasn't it, in the suit?
It was, yeah.
A sort of pre-fame Jean-Claude, and, he's about 5 foot nothing, if that. So, it's complete night and day as to how you can imagine it would have been with Van Damme in the suit, having this guy who he just gives it, like you said, so much weight and so much substance. Let's not forget it's a guy in a suit, but you really invest yourself in it and believe that it's this otherworldly creature. I think his performance is, has to be highly rated. It really does.
I think he probably would have gone on to do more kind of that similar role. I think if he had lived, kind of playing more kind of creatures, kind of like a Doug Jones type, like a creature or a Ron Perlman, kind of doing more kind of creature roles. Just purely because of his size, I think it just kind of helps to have that.
Yeah, he would have been the go-to guy, I think, for any kind of monstrous characters. Get him in, yeah, definitely.
Do you like the callback to the ugly motherfucker? Do you like that bit?
Yes, I absolutely love it, and it's interesting how it knows that as well, because that's a direct, like you said, it's a direct callback to the first film. So you wonder, how would it know that? Was there sort of some kind of recording of the creature from the first film or something. Maybe everything it does is sort of logged and sent back to the mothership or the home planet or something like that, so
To
they can
study.
learn more about humans and the art of hunting them and tips and secrets of how to get the better of them. Maybe because it's otherwise, how would it know? But it is great when it says it, isn't it? You can't help but laugh at it.
Just because he goes to say it. So he takes the mask off and releases the kind of little pressure pin thing that lets all the air out, and then pulls it off. I'll be honest, I don't think the animatronics on the face look as good in this film. I think it looks the eyes are a bit too big for me. I think it looks kind of a little goofy for me. But again, I think it's because it's an extreme close up on it. It just kind of looks a bit puppety for me. But the moment where he's like, "You're an ugly mother," and he's like, "Fucker," he knows what you're about to say. But part of me thinks that if they're all recorded, then maybe they should know how to speak English by now. You know what I mean? After all these years, they should have a huge library of how to speak English on this particular planet, maybe. But I
think so, wouldn't you?
I like the idea that they kind of record of how not to do a hunt and send it back to the home planet. Like, right, don't make this mistake. Don't make that mistake. That sort of thing. So I did like that callback, and there was a few other bits as well where it's kind of like little callbacks and stuff. And
there's a lot of the music's the same as well. It's the same guy on the Alan Silvestri, who did the score for the first one, came back for this second one. So a lot of the musical motifs are the same, aren't they? Which is good, I think, because the score's classic in that first film. So it really adds to the atmosphere, doesn't it? And you believe you're still in that same world.
It's that. I think it's just the jungle drums. Every time the jungle drums come in, you're like, oh shit. It's the Predator theme song effectively. I can't really hear Predator without the jungle drums going. And I like that he keeps that motif, even though it's in LA. I quite like that he keeps that kind of jungle, fight for survival, most dangerous game type feel to because it's just all it is. It's the same film, just transferred to a different location. It's the same hunt. So I like that he just goes, I'm just going to keep those motifs and just carry them over, change them a little bit, play around with them. It's a bit like Friday the 13th when Harry Manfredini would he'd do a different version of the old score, like he did like a disco version of the Friday the 13th theme, which is great in its own way. But yeah, I like that like you said, there is a fair bit of continuity between the films, even in a small way. There's still you can still feel like it is a direct sequel, and it does carry on and expand that universe to greater effect. So I do definitely agree with that. You were talking about the subway scene, so I'd love to go into this because I really enjoyed that scene as well.
Oh, it's superb, isn't it? I mean, it's when they're on there, you think something's going to happen here, and then as soon as you hear that huge thud, and it's great as well that before it turns invisible, you get that wonderful shot of it sort of on all fours on top of the subway car in sort of the flickering light, and you ain't got a chance basically. And it's great the way it sort of goes through the roof of the subway car and then literally cuts a swathe going through this subway, and every man and his dog's armed on that subway as well, which is quite funny. It's the middle of a standoff, and there's an old woman sat in a chair who pulls a gun out when those gangbangers are trying to hold up that guy for cash, and everyone's tooled up with this, that, and the other. And it's great the way it just cuts a swathe. You got Bill Paxton at the end of this gauntlet that it's running, and he's not got a chance basically. It's not going to end well for him, and it's just really well done, isn't it? It's all done in darkness and shadow and flashing light, so you never explicitly see the kills. You see the aftermath of them. My God, do you see the aftermath? But it's all done through the combination of the Predator's POV with the heat vision, and then this sort of half glimpsed horrific killing. So it's a really, really well directed and well put together scene, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. I like it's kind of almost like a strobe effect, isn't it, that's going on with the flashing lights. And it kind of, you can see it coming towards you, and it's getting closer and closer. again, I love that scene with all the getting all the guns out. That made me feel like it was like RoboCop, like the city has gone so bad that everyone just carries around a gun, and they need to carry around a gun. But actually, that scene is pulled directly from the very first. Going back to the comics again, because that's my bag. The very first Dark Horse comic, the producer, I think it was Joel Silver, produced. And he contacted, I think it's Mark Verheiden, who wrote the original kind of Dutch's brother, Concrete Jungle kind of storyline. And read the first issue and was like, I love all this. So the whole idea of that the Predator wants to go to places of conflict, places of extreme heat, like that was set up in the comic. So they pulled that directly from the comic. They were, the comic invented that lore and kind of added it to the film lore. The idea of a really big, hench, maverick cop having problems with his supervisors, that's in there. It's not Dutch's brother, but it's effectively the same story without it being Dutch's brother. And you've got the subway scene where they all get the guns out, and then the Predator kills them all because they're armed, so he's going to kill them. Loads of little bits. Like, they didn't go, we're not going to base all of it on this, but they took a lot of inspiration from the first few issues and pulling that. And I think they had a meeting with the writer as well to kind of discuss the writing of it. So they took those elements and added it to them. So it's almost, in a way, a comic book adaptation of the Predator 2, in a sense. Not a dutiful one, but there are enough of those kind of famous Predator elements that were invented in the comic and then added to the mainstream cinematic version, which are quite important. So
definitely, it works well. I think it might have been a bit too on the nose if they'd have made the film Dutch's brother, because you would have had to have found someone. Because, like you said, the guy in the comics is as jacked up as Arnie is, isn't he? He's huge, the Dutch's brother in the comics. So you would have had to have found someone of equal size to Schwarzenegger, and then you would have had to have them to have a similar accent to Schwarzenegger. I mean, basically, the only way you could do it is have Schwarzenegger play his own brother.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
but he's just got a slight scar. That's how it's different. It's got like a scar or a facial tattoo or something, just to differentiate. But I think that's a bit of a push. I think, like, obviously in the comic, it's like there's a conspiracy and you never really know what's happened to Dutch, because they didn't know if they'd ever did a sequel, whether Arnie would come back or not. So they didn't want to kind of touch that. So I totally get that. But that subway scene is fantastic. I love that. Like, Bill Paxton's character, like, he actually, he saves the day. He's, all the way through it, he's like this bit of he's a bit of a dick. He's, but he, sacrifices himself. And the Lone Ranger finally sacrifices himself for his own partner. So that's, kind of completes his arc. He makes that change and he goes at him with that machete. It's like, rah! Proper goes for him. I just love that kind of, it's just, these sequences are always all really well shot, really sharp, well edited as well and cut. Great bit of just filmmaking. I'm really glad you brought this one up, because I hadn't seen it in years and hadn't thought to kind of go back to it for any real reason. But when you mentioned it, I was like, that sounds like a nice one to revisit, and I'm really glad I did, because I really got a lot out of seeing it again. And I was like, and it's not many films nowadays that will keep me from going on my phone, and this one absolutely did. And I was like, this is fantastic. All the elements are working together, and again, I think it's purely that because Schwarzenegger wasn't in it that people didn't go see it. That's why I think it is. I think so. I mean, let's not forget 1990 was peak Schwarzenegger, wasn't it? The year this was the year he did Total Recall, the year after he does T2, which is kind of the zenith of his career, isn't it? Absolutely. So at this point, he was probably the biggest movie star in the world at this point, wasn't he? Let's not forget. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he still is now, but he's not, in terms of like a commercial entity in the box office, he isn't now what he was then. But they didn't get any bigger than Arnold Schwarzenegger back then. And obviously the first film was so well loved as well that, like you said, it'd be like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example now, but making a sequel to something that starred an A-list
movie star, and then but you don't have them in the sequel. You know, you bring in. I mean, Danny Glover. Let's not forget Danny Glover could act circles around Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But in terms of star power, he could never be on the same level as Arnold Schwarzenegger. When you look at, you know, his CV against Schwarzenegger's box office take, I mean, you know, Lethal Weapon aside, I don't think he really had the above title role in any other blockbusters other than this and the Lethal Weapon series of films. Not the Springtime. I know he's been in blockbuster films, but never as the out and out star, unless I'm missing.
I think he's very good. He plays that supporting role fantastic. I think he kind of always has. Be it even being in other action movies or there's a few of his like I'd like to visit in the future maybe kind of that I've heard about are pretty good. But yeah, I think he's a phenomenal actor, and again, I think he does an excellent job in this. And I love the ending battle, like the climactic battle. It's very comic booky as well. Like it's very like, you know, it goes from one locale to another locale. They're going through walls. They're going underground. You know, they're jumping from rooftop to rooftop. I also quite like that Danny Glover has some like his character Harrigan has these kind of issues. So like he's got a problem with heights. And he hates these birds keep kind of fake scaring him, and he's like, I hate birds. It's always a goddamn bird, you know. I love that he has those kind of like, again, it doesn't necessarily add anything to the main plot, but it's a nice little kind of character touch to have like a little kind of thing. And like I remember on the file he had, it was like he's an obsessive compulsive as well, you know, like you know, because that feeds into the film, like when his partner dies and he's been hunted, he's like, I've got to finish this. I don't care if it's an alien, I don't care, whatever, I'm going to finish this, and we call it an end of the day. And I think that's his main problem with Keyes and that, because they're trying to cryogenically freeze the Predator again, because just get him cold and freeze it and study it and find out more about the Predator. But he's like, no, it's got to die. It is definitely got to die. This is it. This is what's happening. And you know, he does get his wish. He does get his wish in the end. So
absolutely, it's a great fight scene as well, like you said, and it goes on for ages as well. But no, at no point do you ever think, this is getting a bit silly, you know? They don't have him doing any superhuman feats of strength or, you know, acrobatics or anything like that. He's just relying on his weaponry and his sort of, you know, basic will to survive. You know, you buy it, don't you? Despite the fact that he's up against this, like we said, 7 foot tall killing machine, you don't at any point think, oh, come on, you know, it wouldn't last 2 minutes. You actually do buy into it. And, you know, the way he's able to weaken the Predator as the fight goes on, you know, with the gunshots and the chopping the arm off and what have you, you know, he sort of brings it down to his level. It works really well, I think.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think because like Arnie is such, like he's like in the first film, he's like perfection. He's like the most macho, perfect form of a man you can find. You know, there's no real flaws to him. He's very much like, you know, you see what you get. And I like that in this. He's kind of Danny Glover's character is a bit more like, you know, he takes the punches. He feels he gets tired. He is too old for this shit sort of thing. You know, it's more of an Indiana Jones type hero that he takes the punishment, you know, and keeps on going. That's the heroic. But it's not like, I'm so tough you can't hurt me. It's like, no, I'm in a fucking absolute state, but I'm still going to persevere. I'm still going to win out in the end. I'm going to use my smarts and not necessarily my physical prowess to defeat you in the end. Do you feel like the killing of the Predator in this, would you feel like it was climactic or like anticlimactic? Or
I quite like it because you could have given like a false finish at one point, aren't you, when it sets off the self-destruct thing that is its end in the first film. You think, oh, here we go, same ending, but then he's obviously able to dismember its arm and, you know, the fight goes on. So you sort of thinking there's the end and it's not. But that end fight is, I kind of buy it, because again, you're not going to have like this sort of, based on the way the character, like you said, the character of Danny Glover, he's by the end, he can barely even stand, you know. So to have another massive fight at the end there, that, you know, a really spectacular knockdown, drag out fight, I like the fight. It's smaller, it's more intimate, isn't it? The Predator's knackered. Let's not forget its arm's gone.
Yeah.
It's been shot. It's had to sort of emergency patch up a load of shotgun holes in its torso as well. It's on its arse, basically. It can barely function. Glover's done in as well. He's battered and bruised. He's been slashed. He can barely stand. So it's great. That end fight is like two battered old warriors, isn't it? Rather than, like you said, Schwarzenegger, who's, chiseled from granite, the perfect man against the perfect hunter. And at that point, the Predators never take too much punishment during the course of the first film. But here, both of them are just on the absolute last legs, and it's just who's got the strength of will to win at the end. So I really like that fight. It kind of, after all this, like you said, all this spectacle where you're going off the side of buildings, you're going down lift shafts, and it ends in a small room on the alien ship, rather than a huge explosion that levels the city or something like that. Just this intimate sort of sword fight, for want of a better word, obviously not with swords, but with blades. And it works really well,
Because it is, I think that's the thing, the strength of the Predator stories. It's very mano. It's very much like it's the us two against each other, who will win out. And I sometimes like when films don't end with like the world will explode in 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a massive conclusion to things. It can be quite subtle and small. I remember watching like a documentary on the Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, and the directors was saying that the producers wanted it. They were like, it's got to be like X-Men. It's got to be like X-Men. It's got to be like, they've got to have a more bombastic ending, like over the top, worlding. And he's like, no, he's just going to slide between him and kick him in the legs. That's how he's going to beat the Kingpin. And I kind of appreciate that, because it's kind of like, that's fine with me. You don't need to always go to this kind of crazy over the top level. Sometimes it's just a fight. It's just, it just stabs him in the heart. It's not a big to do. He doesn't have to get a laser cannon out or anything like that, or use one of the weapons against him. It's just like, well, I mean, he does, but it's a simple kind of bladed weapon, so why not? And I think it suits. And I think I think that set as well, the set for the ship has, I like, again, it's kind of got these old kind of stone pillars, and the kind of, there's a lot of tribal elements to it as well, again, which I like. And then you've got the nice little trophy room, which with a little tease has an alien skull in it, as one of the trophies, which would be expanded upon in comic books and films, for better or for worse, whatever you consider the Alien versus Predator. Video games as well. Video games quite popular. I played a few of those. Did you like that tease as well?
Oh, yeah. I do remember specifically the first time I saw that, and was just like, oh my God, I can't believe it. A xenomorph, genuine alien skull, I mean, it obviously helps that Fox own both properties, so they can, mix and match and do that. But yeah, I mean, you're looking around that trophy cabinet, and it looks like what might be like almost looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex skull in there, something like that, and some weird and wonderful creatures, maybe from other planets it's been to. And obviously that T-Rex skull, you think, wow, they really have been around a long time, and then there's a human skull. I think it's Bill Paxton or Danny Boy or King Willie's. Yeah, King Willie's.
I think it's King Willie's. I think
King
you
Willie's.
see him cleaning it. I think so.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, taking King Willie's skull takes pride of place right at the front, ahead of like an alien xenomorph and a T-Rex. some tripped out bad boy Yardie is the real sort of ace in the hole. Trophy cabinet. But yeah, that is such a thrill to see that. I'm a sucker for a crossover. I really am. I love it.
Me too.
I love to see worlds colliding and things like that. To see that, you're like, oh, just imagine if you got to see a film like that. And then we did, and it wasn't everything I'd hoped,
maybe
so
not.
To speak.
Especially the second one. Jesus Christ.
Oh God,
that was,
the second one makes the first one look brilliant.
I know, right? No, I like the idea of expanded universes. I know some people might not agree. They might say it waters down both of the franchises, but I think there's a lot of connectivity between the two, and I think it makes sense to cross them over. Like there's some properties you wouldn't. That don't really make sense to cross over, but if you own them, why not? Ghostbusters and Transformers, sure, I'd read that. I like both of those franchises. There might be something there that they can kind of tie into each other. I quite like the Ghostbusters Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle crossover that I read last year. Again, not really got that much to do with each other, but it still worked, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
And yeah, if the opportunity is there and the idea is good and the thinking behind it makes sense, why not? I think I say go for it. I love world, like you say, worlds colliding, and you get more interesting stories potentially. Just for the fact that these two worlds are colliding. Yeah, so I absolutely agree. I like the expanded universe. I like the crossovers. I mean, look at the trailer. We've just seen the trailer for King Kong versus Godzilla, which I'm super buzzed about. Looks amazing. Looks really, really cool. And again, whoever thought we'd have that? So we're being spoilt. And luckily, they're not going to delay it again. But fingers crossed, we'll get it this year because I'm well up for that. So yeah. Excellent.
Oh yeah, give it to me. I like any. I enjoyed Freddy versus Jason, which a lot of people weren't too hot on, but I thought it was perfectly entertaining as movie. Ridiculous, but it was good fun. And I'm all for that. I'll watch anything where it brings two things together, or read anything like that. I'm all for it, mate.
Just all of the Just why not? That's my thing. Just why not? Why not?
Yeah,
do it.
If you
bad,
own it, cross it.
If it's bad, you've tried. Oh well. It's better than not doing it. All the predators that make their appearance in the end. No, they're known as the lost predators because those costumes got lost. That's the reason. They're not lost in the galaxy or anything. Just the costumes became lost. Do you know who played those predators?
I did actually read this, but I'll let you say it if you want to.
Yeah, sure. It's the LA Lakers, the basketball team. Danny Glover was a friend of the team and a fan of the team, and said, "We need some big fellas. Are you free?" And they said, "Yeah." And they dressed up and they walk in, and I love the variation again in the predators. There's one actually called. They've all got their own names. They've given them names. One of them is called Borg, and it's kind of based on the Star Trek race, the Borg. So it kind of looks a bit more cybernetic. Has like cybernetic implants and a mask and stuff. So there are those kind of elements. But the main one, the elder predator who bequeaths Danny Glover the musket or the flintlock pistol rather at the end. He's known as Greyback apparently, and in the comic obviously Hans is like, you've defeated one of ours, you get to live, see you in a bit, mate, kind of thing. Like, you've earned our respect, kind of. So and again, I like that kind of honor code that the predators have. And he hands over a flintlock pistol, as I've said, and it says 1715, I believe it says, and that infers that the predators have always been here. They've always been coming here. It's not just a recent thing. It's not like an invasion. That's a good thing about the predators. It never goes the kind of invasion route or the invasion of the body snatchers kind of there's an insurrection or an insurgency or something like that, incursion, if you will. I like that it's just a hunting party. They're just there to hunt. They might get killed in this hunt. They're there to prove themselves, and if not, I like that they've never gone like, I guess they kind of do that a little bit in The Predator, but again, not a good film. Too many good ideas, not executed properly, I think, in that film. Some interesting ideas that could have, if they explored them within the film more, then I think they just kind of threw everything at the wall and see what stuck. And luckily, it was all the shit slid off the wall, which is majority of that film.
It didn't go well. It's a shame though, because I was so, I'd love this franchise, Dan. If the rumors are true about another Predator film coming down the pike now, it's Disney owned, then I'll be there for it. There's all kind of rumor that even Schwarzenegger might be interested now, finally, in coming back as Dutch. It's all rumor and tittle tattle because he has been offered he was offered a part in this, and apparently he was offered parts in the two that have followed on from this, and always turned them down. And probably in the last two, it was probably a good idea on his point. But
he does turn up in the recent Predator game, Hunting Grounds. He's like a DLC character you can buy, and kind of you can play as him, and he voices the character, and it looks like an older Dutch, and he's got like bits of Predator armor, like he's gone off and killed a few more type thing, and some scars and what have you. And there's a bit of a backstory. You can collect his kind of backstory, audio files type thing. And Gary Busey's son, Jake Busey, plays the scientist he played in the movie, in The Predator, in the game.
Yeah, who is the son of Busey's character as well, isn't it? His son in real life, and he is the son of Peter Keyes. I can't remember, it's Dr. Keyes or something like that. But he is obviously it's his real life son, but he's the son of Peter Keyes as well. A nice little touch like that,
Again, it's a nice little callback, a nice little, cool little kind of just touch to add a bit more kind of continuity to the proceedings. And I'm a big continuity whore, to be honest. I love a bit of continuity. I also, I don't mind the odd retcon or reboot here and there, but I prefer if they keep things within the continuity and they don't reset too often. But that's just my personal taste. Absolutely expand that universe. I think this film does it brilliantly, subtly, smartly. And my, I said this in the top 5 Predator comics as well. I'd like to see the Predator in different time frames. Like I'd like to see a feudal Japan Predator story, or a Korean War Predator story, or just think of all the kind of times in the world where there's been conflict.
Vietnam War would be a good one.
Vietnam, yes, Max, yes, all of that. I write the scripts. I'm sold. Why the hell not? I think that's where you go with the Predator, because I don't know if you can expand the Predator mythos any more than it's already been. I know that they played with a lot of ideas in The Predator and tried to connect all the movies together. But I think just keep it simple, keep it straightforward, just give it new characters, new setting, new location, just do that. Just, it's there's other things you can do, I think, within that. But I think that's where you go with the Predator franchise for me. I don't know how you feel, but that I think is the key now for me.
I'd love to see that. I'd love to see, like we've just said at the end of this film, he gives him a pistol from the 1700s. Well, let's go to the 1700s and see where he got that pistol from. Wouldn't that be cool? Talk about linking the films. Yeah, exactly. Is if at some point they get that gun from some unfortunate poor soul they killed in the 1700s, and that would be interesting as well to see how back then people went about trying to fight back against them with primitive weaponry.
Exactly.
As opposed to all the films we've had, they're all armed to the teeth with heavy artillery and, firepower and all the rest of it. But if you go back to a time before all that, then, how do you stand a chance against a heavily armed killing machine from another world? How do you fight it? I'd love to see something like that.
I think the limitations for the human characters will make it more interesting, because they will have to think of ways to, because he's got lasers, he's got this, he's got that. How do they go about that? How do they defeat him? Again, it always seems to be we seem to be just constantly going forward. Again, this film hints at we should go backwards and see. I want to see the Predator on a pirate ship. Why the hell not? Just. Let's do that. Let's see what happens, and World War I Predator story. So many opportunities and places you can go. There's all of history has had wars. Just go to one of them. Any war, pick a war, easy. And
definitely.
I think those would make for the more interesting stories and opportunities, storytelling opportunities. So that's, again, are you listening? Are you listening, Disney? Are you listening? Pay attention, because we've coming up with some good ideas here.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see what the future holds for the Predator franchise. But fingers crossed, there is an Alien TV series on the way, which I hope is going to be good as well. I hope everything is good, really, in life in the future,
help, doesn't it? Yeah, we don't want it to be shit.
I don't want anything to be shit, really. I can,
no.
I hope I enjoy all things that come my way. Be it Powerpuff live action movies. I'll watch the Powerpuff Girls in live action. And if it's bad, then it's bad. But I'll give it a chance. And
Well,
if
you don't
it's
know
made
till you
well,
try it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're coming towards the end. I think, and I don't think you need to defend the film that much, to be honest, because there seems to be a lot of fans, including myself, of Predator 2. So I'd like to go over to the comments I've had when I said we were going to discuss this film and defend this film. So I've got Ben Crampton, who did our the last Secret Defenders for Small Soldiers. He's on Instagram at Attention Seeking Geek, and he says, "Brilliant choice, and I'm looking forward to this." So obviously a big fan of Predator 2. So yes, thank you very much for that, Ben. Then heading over to Facebook, another one of our Patreon members, Paul Meller, is saying, from memory, it wasn't bad for a sequel. Not as good as the original, but some nice action sequences and Easter eggs linking up with the Alien series. Danny Glover is a bit of an unlikely match for the Predator, though I think he pulled it off.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty much what we were saying. Paul said, thank you for that, Paul. Okay, over to Twitter now. So Tony Farita is back at it at Tricycle Boombox. He says, I wonder if you guys think that Danny was miscast in this. He is just so earnest that a rogue cop doing whatever it takes does not really fit him. Would you agree with that? Or do you think this rogue cop character fits in with Danny Glover?
Like we've already discussed, I think he plays it perfectly. You buy into it. I think he is quite earnest, but I think that helps you identify with him and kind of root for him a bit more than if he was a sort of maverick asshole, sociopath. Bit of a twat, like you see, these alcoholic cops who cheat on the wives and taking backhands off the mob, but then they'll still get the bad guy at the end, But no, he's although he's a tough, he's a clean cop, so I like that.
Yeah, he is a clean cop. Yeah, he sticks his finger up at like authority, but who doesn't? Let's be honest. Yeah. I know I do in my job. But he's a nice guy. I think obviously in Lethal Weapon, which he's most famously known for, he's the good cop of the good cop bad cop scenario. Yeah. He's the stickler for the rules. He's the family man. I get that it's hard to kind of dispel that performance, but I think actors, when I was acting myself, I would always look for roles with variety or try and bring as much variety to a role, because often they would get a bit stale if you got the same role over and over again. So I think I agree with you. I think he does pull that off. I would not want to mess with him. And I believe he is a good cop, but will break the rules to protect his friends and do what's right when red tape tries to trip him up all the time. But yes, so don't particularly agree with you, Tony, but it's a very, very good comment, and I appreciate you getting in touch. And he's another one of my patrons, so thank you again, Tony, for being a patron. We've got Robert Stewart Hudson at Robert Stewart Hudson. So this is a friend of mine. We did a few plays back in the day. Very talented actor, very nice guy as well. And he's quite the fan of the kind of geek stuff, so films and comics and that. So he said he based elements of his version of the Duck character on Bill Paxton. So that must be a character he's played in something. I'm not entirely sure what he's referencing, but he based that on Bill Paxton's character in this film. And then he goes, "Surveillance is my specialty," which is one of Bill Paxton's lines. So it's nice to know that Predator 2 influenced further acting roles and things in the future. So that's
it should.
Nice. As well it should. So Nerds Chatting at Nerds Chatting. It's a guilty pleasure of a movie. Whilst it doesn't hold a candle to the original, it's clever enough to take a different look at what the monster can do in a different setting. Plus, Danny Glover is a badass and fights a predator. Come on, does it get any better than that? No, it doesn't. Well, we're almost there. We're almost there. Last one. So at Dave Horrocks at Raging Base UK. I don't think Predator 2 is as bad as the stick it gets, but I'm not a fan of Danny Glover in it. I just keep expecting him to say, I'm too old for this shit. So again, like we've said, it's it's hard to differentiate from that, his most famous role. But I think he's a fine actor. So again, fair point. But I think me and Max disagree with that, but still good. So that's your Comics in Motion compatriots, isn't it? Those two lovely fellas, which they did an excellent podcast on Wanted recently, which is a book I do not like, but I did appreciate the podcast and their discussion of it and re-examination of it. It's good to see a different opinion on something. So, but they've not changed my mind on it, but but it was still a good listen. So speaking of podcasts, we should promote yours while we're here. So would you like to tell people where they can find your podcast and you on the social medias?
Yeah, sure. Well, on social media, you can find me on Twitter at Maxi Byrne, which is spelled MAXYBYRNE. If you go there, there's sort of links to the different websites I write reviews and articles for, comic book based stuff. So have a check of those. And then if you want to check out my podcast, it's called Mandatory Marvel and DC, but it's located on the Comics in Motion podcast feed, which I'm glad to be a part of. There on Twitter at Comics in Motion P is the address to find them on Twitter, and then there'll be links there to the feed where my show is, along with a host of shows. Now there really is a litany of different shows on that network,
and they are all fantastic, all really good shows. It's great to have a kind of comic book podcast community, because I think that's what it's all about. Comic books should bring us together, and we should talk about them, discuss them on length. And I think your show's great, and I've been a guest on it. I will link your show in the show notes as well.
Wonderful.
So people can find you nice and easy. But it's been great having you on. So I'm just gonna say where to find me, because the show's all about me, and I'm very selfish.
It is.
So no. So you can find me on Facebook. So it's at Secret Balls on Facebook. It's at Dan_Balls on Twitter, Instagram, SpiderDan Secret Balls. And when you interact, don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle. And for everything else you need to know, just swing over to SpiderDanandTheSecretBalls.com on the World Wide Web. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It's got reviews, links, and how you can support the podcast further. You can become a Patreon like I Am Jack's Musings, Paul Meller, Max Byrne, Tony Farina, and Scott Hodgson. Big thank you to all you guys for continually promoting and listening and paying that hard-earned money, which I, again, really appreciate any support I can get, however big or small. And I think I'm going to have almost everybody who's currently a patron. I'm trying to get them all on the show as well. So you all get your own little podcast as well, as a little thank you from me as well. This has been fantastic. Thank you so much, Max, for coming on and taking your time out this evening. I know you're a very busy man, lots of responsibilities and things going on in the world. So I do appreciate you giving up your time this evening.
Oh, thank you for inviting me on, Dan. It's like I said, I'm a huge fan, and I'm glad to be on. It's an absolute privilege to be asked. So thank you. The pleasure was all mine, sir.
Oh, no, it was all mine.
It was all mine.
Well, we'll say goodbye. Again, this has been great. I hope you enjoyed it, guys, and we'll see you very soon. Much, much more, and make sure that you prepare for Prattle. Bye-bye, everybody.